These are some of the most dangerous women that have ever lived. And ladies and box heads, let's start off with an Italian woman who slaughtered her victims, melted their bodies in acid, and then turned their flesh into soap, and their blood into tea cakes, all in the name of motherly love. Her name, Leonarda Cianciulli. But before we get into the killings, let me tell you about how an innocent woman turned into one of the most ruthless killers the world has ever seen in the first place. Leonarda was a widow living in a remote village in southern Italy. A mother who gave birth to 17 children with only 4 of them surviving. No, I'm not even kidding, she suffered 3 miscarriages. 10 more of them didn't even reach their youth. As a result, Cianciulli genuinely believed she was cursed, and honestly, if I was in her scenario, I wouldn't think any different. But here's where it gets a little crazy. A fortune teller also confirmed her suspicions. Yeah, no, fine guys, let's go trust a fortune teller because they always know what's going on. Anyways, the fortune teller told her, you will marry, you will have children, but they will all die. That right there is when Leonarda's smile completely faded. See, back then in rural Italy, superstitions weren't just mumbo jumbo. They were taken pretty serious. It was almost like a way of life. People feared the evil eye, trusted fortune tellers as if, they were scientists. Seriously, people believed curses could destroy families. All that to say, it's not a surprise that she would be super overprotective of her 4 children. And when her eldest son was enlisted in World War II, Leonarda couldn't do much about sending her favorite, the golden child, away to war. She panicked and became convinced that the only way to protect her son from anything bad happening to him was through, get this, sacrifice. Human, gosh darn sacrifice. And that's where Virginia Cacipo comes in. Now, Virginia used to be somebody. A former soprano, a star gracing the grandest stages of Italy. But by the time Leonarda came across her, Virginia was nothing but a ghost of her former self. She was aging, penniless, and desperate for a second chance. Leonarda, she saw that. She promised to return Virginia to her glory days. The promise was in the shape of work as the secretary for a mysterious impresario in Florence. Anyways, by then, Leonarda had already mastered the art of luring in desperate women. She instructed Virginia not to tell a single person what she was doing for her. Virginia listened. It's like telling the box head watching this video to subscribe. Of course you're gonna do it. Anyways, let's now fast forward to September 30th, 1940. The Second World War was at its peak and Leonarda was worried sick about her child when she heard knocking coming from the door. Leonarda opened the door knowing full well it was Virginia who had come to her asking for help. Her plan was working. She smiled, inviting the former soprano into her home. That knock right there would prove to be Virginia's last. But anyways, Virginia was very hopeful. She blindly trusted Leonarda to deliver her this new job. The new job came with the promise of fancy gigs, nobility, maybe even a comeback. All she had to do was tell no one. Leonarda gave her a piece of paper to write her goodbyes for her friends and family. She should have already kinda knew what was coming, but imagine being so cold to have planned something this deadly. As Virginia wrote her goodbye letters, Leonarda offered her some wine. They toasted to new beginnings. Just as Virginia turned her back to the table, bang! Leonarda brought down an axe. Blood was everywhere. There was an axe in the skull. To make things even worse, Virginia was still alive. Yeah, that's right. Leonarda's blow had not completed the job. Not that it mattered. She showed no remorse whatsoever. So she struck again and again until Virginia's lifeless body stopped moving once and for all. But this right here was not the end. For Leonarda, this was only the beginning. She dragged the body towards her large copper cauldron. And let me tell you what happened next. She started butchering the body. And then Leonarda took the pieces and threw it into the pot. 7 kilos of caustic soda and continuous stirring. Stripped off the bone, it was dissolved. Okay, so you would imagine that Leonarda would at least throw away the fat that rose to the top, right? Wrong. She scooped it out, dried it in the oven, added cologne, and then here, get this, and then turned it into soap. Yeah, you heard me right. Soap! Creamy soap, as confessed by Leonarda herself. As for all of the blood that was there, well, Leonarda had a plan for that too. She baked it all into tea cakes. Yep, tea cakes to be eaten. And then what do you think this psycho did with the tea cakes? Oh, she just gave it to the neighbors and guests so that they could eat it. Leonarda Cianciulli wasn't just a killer, this psycho was a cannibal. She even described Virginia as sweet just like sugar. Ugh. Worst of all, she didn't even feel bad about any of this. Because Leonarda genuinely believed that she saved her son. That Virginia saved her son. But here's the thing, Virginia wasn't her only victim, she was her third. Before her came Faustina Setti and Francesco Soavi, two lonely middle-aged people. Both of them also believed that Leonarda was helping them restart their life. And all of them met by the same fate. Somehow no one around suspected a damn thing. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that the first two victims were not public figures. Virginia's death, however, caused a ruckus. It was different. It had a lot of drama. Virginia wasn't just a middle-aged woman. She was a soprano, a star, a public figure. People noticed she was missing and many got suspicious. Among them, Virginia's own sister. She simply refused to buy the sudden disappearance. Who would? She asked questions and then she went to the police. Eventually, all of the questions led to Leonarda Cianciulli. As a result, the police showed up at Cianciulli's residence. They asked her many questions, but they didn't believe the whole story or the mumbo jumbo she was spewing. Somehow, she did avoid suspicion. But then, one of the police officers asked her a question that certainly gave it all away. The police believed the murder had been carried out by Leonarda's son, and there was no way she was letting her son get blamed. And that's when she confessed to it all. In fact, her funky ass was almost proud of it. When the officers pointed out details, Leonarda corrected them on many occasions. Eventually, justice was served. It was delayed. But Leonarda showed up in court wearing black with an arrogant smirk. The press had dubbed her as the soap maker of Correggio. Anyways, people just showed up to see her, to catch a glimpse of the woman who made candles, cookies, and soap out of corpses. It was the trial of the decade. Verdict, you guessed it, guilty. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 more in a criminal asylum. Chillingly, that fortune teller that we mentioned in the beginning of this story had made another prediction. Great, woman! Great! Thanks for coming back! Thanks for coming back and giving one of your other insightful thoughts! She ended up actually being right though. She said that in your right hand I see prison, in your left an asylum. Leonarda Cianciulli died in 1970, in the asylum from cerebral apoplexy, leaving behind destroyed families and horror stories. Now, something I found kind of interesting is all of her tools, like the knives, the cauldron, are all being preserved behind glass in Rome. Like, I am pretty sure you can go check out these things right now. Talking about the most dangerous woman in the history of mankind, you can't not mention the woman who was feared by Pablo Escobar himself. Ladies and boxheads, I'm talking about Griselda Blanco. And she went by many names, often called the Godmother or the Black Widow. And this right here is her story. Griselda was born in Colombia in 1943. She grew up in the slums of Medellin, quite possibly the most dangerous place on earth at the time. She was surrounded by poverty, violence, and corruption. Blanco didn't only witness brutality, she was molded by it. She learned it, then perfected it herself. According to many sources, cause guys, it was the 1940s, 50s, come on. We don't know exactly for sure, but her first murder was apparently committed at the young age of 11 years old. All because a family refused to pay for their son she kidnapped for ransom. That moment possibly set the tone for the rest to come. By the 1970s, Griselda had relocated to the United States, Queens and then Miami. Anyways, no, she wasn't there to chase the American dream. The plan was to conquer it, with a little bit of that white dust, cocaine. Back in the 70s, Miami was a powder keg, a playground for the cartels, and people knew Griselda. After all, she wasn't just another player, she was the architect, the mastermind behind the first major pipeline from Colombia to the United States. controlling hundreds of smugglers, fleets of planes, even children as mules. People feared her for many reasons, her reach, her rap. Griselda's fear was the perfect tool. If you disrespect her, you're dead. Betray her, you're dead. Disloyalty? Dead. Oh, and I'm not just talking about any type of death, not quick, clean hits. Nothing could help you if you crossed the Godmother. Griselda's modus operandi, or to make it really simple here, method of operation, was motorcycle drive-by shootings. 2 hitmen, 1 motorcycle, 1 machine gun. It's simple, you pull up, you spray bullets, and you disappear. Pure chaos. And in Miami, it's a war zone. At this time, it was called the cocaine cowboy era. Bodies dropping daily, and Griselda was the one behind most of them. What made her truly ruthless was her ability to separate feelings from work. If you work? Can you even call it that? She wouldn't only order hits on former allies or enemies. Griselda killed her own sugar daddies. Husbands. Yes, husbands. Not 1, not 2, 3. Is the name I mentioned earlier making more sense? That right there is how she got the name the Black Widow. Man, get the Marvel movie out of your head. We're not talking about that. Anyways, Griselda had enough men in her life. She needed obedience. If you crossed her, you didn't live to tell the story. She once ordered the killing of a business rival, which is quite common in the world of bloodshed, right? Well, wait until you hear the full story. Griselda ordered the hit at a child's birthday party. The target was there with family. Kids laughing, balloons swaying in the breeze, parents cracking open a beer and watching their little ones. Griselda, she didn't care though. Her orders were clear and her sicarios opened fire. And that's when chaos erupted. Screams filled the air. 4 dead, including a 2-year-old caught in the crossfire. No remorse, no apologies. Just another message for the rest. By the 1980s, Blanco Funky Ass was responsible for over 200 murders. And that's on the conservative side, according to many experts. So naturally, you gotta ask yourself, what brought her demise? Well, it wasn't a rival, nor the DEA. It was a phone call. In 1985, a tapped phone line was enough to crumble Griselda's massive empire. Her movements have been tracked, the deliveries led the DEA to her location. The Queenpin was arrested in California, charged with murder and drug trafficking. And when the Queen of Cocaine showed up in court, it was a sight to behold. Her hair done, chin up, designer clothes. None of that would help because on February 17th, 1985, Griselda's funky ass was found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Wait a second, hold on, let me check my notes again. Am I reading that right? How the hell she only get 15 years? Whatever, then things got worse. Former hitmen turned on her. So did her former lovers. Walls were closing in, then came the biggest blow of all. Her son cooperated too. Her own baby! As a result, Griselda pled guilty 20 years in federal prison. She served her time quietly, but the legend never faded. In 2004, Blanco was released and deported to Colombia, where she would return to her hometown, hoping for a life of peace and quiet. But the past never forgets, neither do enemies. Let's fast forward to September 3rd, 2012. A regular afternoon, Griselda's walking to a nearby butcher shop. It's broad daylight. She doesn't notice the man on the bike, which is kind of ironic after all, that's her own signature. 1 bike, 2 bullets to the head. Her body hits the floor. Just like that, Griselda Blanco died the same way she killed so many others. Execution style, in public, daylight, and also no mercy. Next is the chilling story of Myra Hindley, the other half of the infamous duo responsible for the Moors murders. A cold-blooded killer who used her innocent face to lure children in to their deaths, with the help of her evil partner. Hold on, and then the pair would bury their victims on the bleak and unforgiving hills of Saddleworth Moor, in the desolate north of England. I'm seriously telling you, Myra's crimes shook the whole world. But to truly understand the darkness in her heart, our story has to begin in Manchester, in the year 1942. That's when Myra was born, to working class parents with a rough home life. An abusive and alcoholic father. strict Catholic upbringing, and shaped by violence. For her cruelty, it wasn't really shocking, it was almost expected. The way she grew up, her sense of right and wrong became twisted. Somewhere along the way, Myra stopped flinching at horror completely. Actually, despite all of that, in many ways, she was kind of a normal teenager. She loved poetry and was fiercely loyal. But there were some strange signs. From idolizing Nazi Germany to her obsession with violence itself, Myra even kept a scrapbook filled with articles on murders and crimes. Then she met him, Ian Brady. Intelligent, brooding man, sharp-tongued, twisted mind. They met at work, where Myra was a typist and Ian was a stock clerk. From work colleagues, the two would become everything for one another. And that's where Brady started to shape her mind. Poisoned her with crazy, insane thoughts. The funky dude started gifting her books on sadism, Hitler, Marquis de Sade. And Myra, she ate it all up. He whispered fantasies about the perfect crime. And again, Myra listened. Not only that, and then she helped him do it. She agreed to become the bait and Ian agreed to do the rest. Who was their first victim? 16-year-old Pauline Reed. On July 12, 1963, Myra was driving in her own neighborhood when she came across Pauline. As a part of the plan, Myra asked the teenager to help her search for a lost glove on the moors. Naive and innocent, Pauline just said yes. She got into the van, never to be seen alive again. On the moor, Ian was waiting. What follows next is not exactly for the faint-hearted, so ladies and box heads, get ready. She was beaten, sexually assaulted, and not just by Ian, Myra participated too. And then the poor girl was finally murdered. In fact, she was left alone with Pauline too after Ian went to find a spade to bury her. Then they buried her in a shallow grave, and no one suspected a thing. Pauline just became another missing child. But the two were just getting started. Only 3 months after the horrors of July 1963, Myra and Ian struck again. Who was their next victim? John Kilbride. And you want to know what's interesting about this kid? He's 12 years old. He was a happy boy who worked at his local market. November 1963, Myra lured the young boy with the promise of a bottle of sherry. She just told him they needed help loading some boxes. John agreed, and just like that, he signed off on his fate too. He would never make it back home. On the moor, he was met with the same fate. The pair did unspeakable things to this kid. Assaulted, mutilated, and killed. Ian even photographed the aftermath as some sort of sick trophy. In fact, he took a picture of Myra standing on top of the freshly dug grave of this little kid. And just like that, 2 children were gone. No one knew who to blame, and meanwhile, Ian and Myra just looked like your normal couple. They took walks, dinners with family, church on Sundays, just an average couple madly in love. What could possibly be wrong? But behind closed doors, they were planning their next murder. June 1964, Keith Bennett was only 12 years old. Walking to his grandmother's house, the boy never arrived. Myra played her part in this too. She tricked the young boy into her mini pickup, then drove the boy to his gruesome fate under the false pretense of looking for a glove. Now, the thing that I really think is sad about this specific story is that Keith's body has never been found till this day. And it gets worse. Keith's mother has been searching for decades. Oh, gosh. Her dying wish was only to find the remains, but again, it never happened. Myra didn't break her silence, even the location was secret. Even behind bars, she didn't give up Keith. Now, nobody knows why, but maybe it was her final act of control and power. Despite all of the murders being just as gruesome, if not more, it was Leslie Ann Downey's disappearance that shook the whole of Britain. Only 10 years old, Leslie was snatched from a fairground on Boxing Day 1964. Myra again played her part perfectly as bait. First, she noticed that Leslie had been isolated from her parents. Reacting quickly, she asked Leslie for some help. That right there was enough to get the kid in the car. The couple then took the young kid home, stripped her, tied her to a bed, and tortured her. And guys, they recorded it. The authorities even played it in open court. I'm speechless. Even detectives that were on this case were crying because of this. And Leslie begged for her life and she was pleading for her mother. And Myra Hindley, she didn't even flinch. Just like that, the couple had tortured and killed 4 kids. Then came the final known victim of Brady and Hindley. It was late on the 6th of October 1965, when the couple drove to Manchester Railway Station. Brady picked up Edward Evans, who was a 17-year-old apprentice engineer. They drove him to their house under the guise of a sexual encounter. Wine to relax and music to get things started. Somewhere between all of this, Myra disappeared to fetch Ian Smith, who was her brother-in-law. The plan was to make Smith a part of their circle. Smith had been inspired by Brady, but he felt something was off the minute he arrived. It wasn't until Ian bludgeoned Edward to death that Smith immediately ran out of the place and straight to the police. That's when the police raided the house. They found weapons, blood, and clues. But it wasn't until they found a bag at Manchester Central Station that things got out of hand. They discovered the body of Leslie Ann Downey, along with an audio tape. My gosh, Myra and Brady were just monsters, and finally they were caught, found guilty of multiple murders. Both were sentenced to life in prison, but somehow Myra tried to get out of the mess by claiming she was innocent. Huh, woman? What part of this are you innocent in? Talking about how Brady had manipulated her, how she was just a stupid girl in love. Girl, I'm in love too. You don't see me murdering people, what the? Anyways, even if some people had developed a soft spot for her, the audios changed everything. She was caught yelling "shut up" to Leslie. The photos that were found were more evidence of just how evil Myra truly was. In 2002, she died of heart failure at the age of 60. And if you ask me, I'm surprised she lived that long. I would have killed her my damn self. She took her secrets to the grave, like where Keith's body was buried. How much she enjoyed it all, but no one truly believes that she's innocent. She was a willing participant, a cold-hearted killer, and again, one of the most dangerous women in the history of mankind. And we're not even done. Moving on to the woman who claimed she only killed out of self-defense, but ended up becoming one of the deadliest female serial killers in American history. And I'm talking about Aileen Wuornos. Aileen's story begins with abandonment back in 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. Her father convicted child molester, and he hung himself in prison. Her mother, not honestly much better, left her when she was only 4 years old. So to no one's shock, by 11 years old, Aileen was already trading sex for cigarettes and also food. In her early teenage years, she already learned how to evade the authorities. And by 14 years old, she was pregnant. Not willingly though, it was from sexual assault. But as a result of that, she was kicked out of her house by her grandfather. Homeless, pregnant, nowhere to go, it's hardly a surprise that Aileen grew up to have such a tough life. By age 20, she'd been arrested for a DUI, for firing a weapon from a moving car, and also assault. Despite it all, what Aileen did was far worse. And also, all of this only contributed to her ruthless and cold killing streak. In the late 1980s, she came across Taria Moore, a waitress. She was quiet and reserved. Aileen was drifting across Florida selling her body on the highways. She was hitchhiking, living off scraps, all of it. So it wasn't a surprise that she fell hard for Taria. The waitress became her world, and to support them both, Aileen continued her ways. Basically by doing tricks on highways. Until one night in 1989. Something suddenly snapped that day. Richard Mallory, her first known victim, took Aileen to a motel. Apparently it was a normal night, but as per Aileen, things went south quickly. According to her, he had sexually assaulted her and also beaten her. And it was all in self-defense that she pulled the trigger. Multiple times. Aileen maintained her innocence, claiming it was survival self-defense. But the police actually didn't buy it. And I guess after researching everything, they were right not to. As the months rolled by, more bodies started piling up. On June 1st, 1990, a 43-year-old construction worker, David Spears, was found nude in Citrus County. He'd been shot 6 times in the torso. Then Charles Carskadden's body was discovered. He was a 40-year-old part-time rodeo worker in Pasco County, shot 9 times in the torso and stomach. Soon after that, in Marion County, they found the body of Troy Burris, a 50-year-old salesman, on the 4th of August, 1990. Less than a week after, he was reported missing. Okay, when he was found, he was fairly decomposed, but the examiner found 2 gunshots in his, you guessed it, torso. All of it was the work of Aileen and her .22 caliber pistol. Oh, but she wasn't just done yet. A month later, a retired Air Force major, police officer, and Florida child abuse investigator, Charles Dick Humphreys, was found dead. And what I find interesting is that he was also found in Marion County. Gunshot wounds to the head and torso, and a car later discovered in Suwannee County. Finally, they found the partially disrobed body of Walter Antonio, and he was found in Dixie County. A 62-year-old man shot 4 times in the back and head. All the work of the infamous Aileen Wuornos. And guys, every single time Aileen told the police, hey, it was self-defense. The reasoning, it was the same. They were trying to hit and sexually assault her. Now, what I find interesting is that the evidence told a completely different story. Cash, luggage, electronics, everything was discovered in pawn shops sold under Aileen's name. Fingerprints returned a match on the stolen vehicles. And worst of all, Taria knew everything. In fact, when the police caught Aileen in 1991, they got their hands on Taria first. A deal was on the table, all for testifying against her lover. Otherwise, her funky ass would be facing charges herself. Aileen, though, she confessed to everything. She wanted to protect Taria. What she didn't know was that Taria had already told the police everything they wanted to know. And Taria walked free. On January 16th, 1992, Aileen was sentenced to death for killing Richard Mallory. 6 more death sentences were picked up. In total, it's believed she killed 7 people. 6 bodies were discovered by the police, while Peter Seams's body is still missing. He was a 65-year-old resident of Central Florida. His car was discovered in Orange Springs in July 1990. Witnesses described 2 women near the car around the same time Seams went missing. But it wasn't a mystery for long, as Aileen fully revealed the story through her interviews. And boy, were they bone-chilling and articulate. There was an obvious anger in her, but underneath that anger, Aileen shows calmness too. She claimed the police wanted her to kill, because they could have arrested her sooner, but she claimed society turned her into a monster. Her eyes, wide, unstable, and glassy, stared directly into the lens. And this is her words: "I'm a serial killer. I killed them, I robbed them, and I'd do it again." Aileen believed it was revenge on the men that were abusing her. And then on October 9th, 2002, she said no to her very last meal. Florida State Prison happily agreed, and Aileen was executed by lethal injection. Her last words, frightening to say the least. "I'll be back like Independence Day. With Jesus, big mothership and all. I'll be back." At the time, Aileen became the first female serial killer to be executed in the US in more than 50 years. And she was by far the most terrifying. And finally, we have the true story of Juana Barraza, also known as the Silent Lady because she was a professional wrestler in Mexico. Her story is a little bit interesting because it's a story of rage, twisted justice, and trauma. She led a double life, hiding behind masks both in the ring and in real life. This story begins in Hidalgo, Mexico, in 1957 when Juana was born. Like most people on this list, her childhood wasn't filled with toys or love. It was filled with nothing but pain and abandonment. Her mother was a raging alcoholic and an addict. She was so far gone that she traded her daughter to a man. And guess what? For a few beers. Juana was 13 years old when the abuse began. She was beaten, sexually assaulted. Eventually, she got pregnant, and then beaten again. As she grew up, the rage that she felt inside didn't fade away. It only festered inside, and it found a target. That's how she remembered her mother, and boy, did she hate her mother. All of her victims reminded her of her. And like you would expect, all of her victims met a brutal end. Between 1998 and 2006, dozens of elderly women were found dead in Mexico City. Strangled, beaten, bludgeoned with irons, stethoscopes, even statues of saints. Now that one's kind of messed up. But anyways, the underlying patterns were always the same. All women that were over 60. Each of them also lived alone. And every single one of them died in their homes. Her modus operandi wasn't that complex. Gain trust, which was done either by dressing up as a nurse or house help. Sometimes she even claimed to be from the government aid program. She'd help them bring groceries, and then once she was inside, she would just go completely berserk. Juana was a wrestler, so she didn't face much resistance. Her blows were vicious and fatal. Some victims were found with phone cords tied to them, others with their own tights. With the city in panic mode and police clueless, Juana would return to the ring at night. The media dubbed her La Mata Viejitas, which in English means little old lady killer. Among the chaos, the police arrested dozens of trans women and crossdressers. And they were so confused, the police believed maybe the killer was hiding in feminine clothing. They were close, but not quite. As for Juana, she hid in plain sight and continued her killing spree. Her double life was the perfect disguise. Hiding behind a mask, wrestling in lucha libre matches. But no one looked that closely. I mean, she was powerful, stocky, and cold. Nobody suspected a thing. That's until January 25th, 2002. That's the day everything came crashing down for Juana. An elderly woman named Ana Maria de los Reyes Alfaro was found dead in her home, murdered in cold blood, strangled with a stethoscope. But this time, there was a witness. Ana's neighbor had seen a stocky woman in red leaving the scene in a hurry. Only a few minutes later, Juana was arrested in the street. She had stolen a couple items from the victim's house. Ladies and box heads, it was over. Even though Juana maintained that she had done nothing wrong. The evidence, it was piling up. Her fingerprints were found in at least 10 murder scenes. And then she finally confessed to killing one woman, claiming that the elderly woman had insulted her. But after a little bit of digging, the police realized that she was lying. Authorities believe she murdered between 42 and 48 women, making her one of the most prolific female serial killers in history. In 2008, Juana Barraza was sentenced to 759 years in prison. Mexico had never dished out a sentence that gosh darn big. The wrestling star turned serial killer was behind bars. The masked woman who crushed the weak with her bare hands. Her rage exploding into a killing spree spanning years. But despite being locked up, Juana didn't cry or beg for forgiveness. She only had one singular request, which you're definitely gonna think is weird. Can I keep watching Lucha Libre on TV? What? You are in prison for killing how much is it? 42 to 48 women. And all you gotta say is let me watch a Lucha Libre? Not even box head? Seriously? To this day, Juana remains in a Mexican prison. She's alive, silent but alive. The silent fighter in the ring to the silent killer in the streets, you feel me? But what I can say is she's one of the most dangerous women to ever live. If you thought the women in this video were scary, wait until you hear about the youngest serial killers to ever exist. No, seriously, one of them was just 10 years old. Yeah, click the video on the screen if you want to hear more about that.